The examples for the principle of double effect work like this. I'll give you 5 examples, the first of which will meet all 4 criteria, and the next 4 which will violate 1 criteria. So imagine that you are walking down the street and you come across a burning building. Inside, or on the second floor of the burning building, is a young child crying out, "Save me." At this point, the firefighters have not yet arrived. It looks like the fire is building pretty well, and you're wondering whether or not you can get in and out of the building. It's too far for the child to jump. Whether or not you can get in and out of the building successfully without death to either you or the child. So you remember the principle of double effect in terms of PDE, and remember the 4 keywords that are listed in your notes: the act, the effects, the intention, the proportion. So the act itself, we would say, is entering a building. You could even say entering a burning building. But that act is not intrinsically evil. That act is either good or indifferent. What's the effect? Well, the effect could be that either you and or the child are injured. Now remember that the effect, in order for this criterion to be satisfied, must be such that it occurs as an incidental byproduct of the action. So you would not experience this effect, you would not be using this effect of getting injured as a means to obtaining the good effect. It would come about as an incidental byproduct. The third criterion: the effect that is bad, namely your being injured, is not intended for its own sake. That's not why you enter the building. You enter the building in order to try to save the child. The fourth criterion, proportion, it's measurable. You're risking a life for a life, or you're risking injury to life in order to save a life. So in this first example, you can see that all 4 criteria are satisfied. Now look at a second example. There's an employee that works for a company, the controller of the company, and he or she has complete control over all money of the company. The owners trust her implicitly. This particular employee has a sick child, and the employee has used up all resources in order to try to save and care for this sick child. Friends, family, insurance, savings, everything. The employee then reasons, well, I could take the money from the company. I have the complete trust of the owners, they would never know, and I could use that money to try to obtain a cure for the illness of my child. So you look at the 4 criteria of the principle of double effect. Obviously, there is an action with 2 effects. One good, the child could be cured. One evil, the company would lose the money. What about the first criterion, which says the act must be good or at least indifferent? In this case, we're looking at stealing, embezzlement, so the act is intrinsically evil, and thus the other 3 criteria need not be considered at all. Example number 2 or 3, depending. There's a man who has a rich uncle, and he is the sole caregiver as well as the sole heir for the rich uncle. The rich uncle happens to be an alcoholic. So this individual, who is both the sole heir and the sole caregiver for the rich uncle, reasons that if he stocks the house more aggressively with alcohol, the rich uncle will die sooner, using up less of his money for his own care, and thereby the individual will inherit more money. First criterion, the act itself, stocking the house with liquor. That's indifferent. It's not evil. The second criterion, however, says that you must not obtain the evil effect, or rather you must not obtain the good effect by means of the evil effect. And in this case, we have an action with 2 effects. Stocking the house with liquor gives us an earlier death for the rich uncle. That's the evil effect. It gives us a good effect that the person inheriting the money gets more money. That's the good effect. But in fact, that good effect is coming about by means of the evil effect. So it violates the second criterion. Remember, all 4 criteria must be satisfied in order for the action to be justified on the grounds of the principle of double effect. Next example. There's a corrupt politician who is running for re-election. The corrupt politician looks at his district and notices that there is a large contingent of poor people in his district. And he reasons that if he sends a check, say $500 or whatever, to each of the people who are poor or really need the money in his district, that they would most likely vote for him in the next election. All right, again, one example, two effects. The action is he's sending a check to the poor. The good effect is the poor get the money they need. The evil effect is that the corrupt politician gets reelected. Notice what the third criterion says. The evil effect must not be intended for its own sake. If you notice in the first example that we had, you're trying to rescue a child in a burning building. The evil effect came about as an unintended side effect. However, in this case, with the corrupt politician giving money to the poor in order to get reelected, the evil effect is intended. That's what he wants to do. Last example. There is a business owner who needs to make a flight across the mountains in order to have a meeting with a customer. So he hires a pilot and a plane, and about 2 or 3 days before the flight is to take place, the pilot comes to him and tells him that there is very bad weather expected and that he thinks that the flight should be postponed. The business owner declines to postpone the flight. Now, what do we have? We have an action with a good effect. We're meeting with the customer and conducting a business deal and keeping people employed and so forth. We have a bad effect. The possibility, if not the likelihood, probability of being injured and or even killed while making this flight to meet this customer. First criterion, the act itself, it's indifferent, flying a plane. Second criterion, are we achieving the good effect by means of the evil effect? No, we're not trying to crash, or the crashing and burning would not be the way we would get there. In fact, it would be the way we would not get there. Is the evil effect intended for its own sake? Surely not. No one intends to fly a plane and hopes to crash. Is there proportion? Criterion number 4. And here it looks like probably this example would fail on the fourth criterion. We're risking human life for the sake of a business deal which could probably be completed in another fashion. Now then, there are other examples that we could go through, and if we were in the classroom, and I regret we're not, that we probably would go through and you would be able to have a lot more give and take on this. But since we're now in the second part of the 2 videos, and this one is already going on over 8 minutes, I think that we will conclude this at this point. If you have questions about the principle of double effect in particular, please email them to me, and I will most likely, if there's more than 1 or 2 questions, accumulate them and answer every one at once. All right, well, have a great week.